Shiva Mahbobi, the co-founder and spokesperson of the campaign to free political prisoners in Iran. Shiva was once also a political prisoner herself. She joins us now on I for Iran. Welcome to the program and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Nagar. Thank you for having me.
Shiva, people are being forcibly injected and killed inside Iranian prisons, sometimes inside morgues, in detention centers. Tell us what you know so far.
Yes, obviously killing detainees and political prisoners or even subjecting them to pharmacological torture is not very new. But what is actually quite shocking is that how they even kill, basically giving them finishing shot, all these injured detainees. And then what they do, they put them among those who were killed on the street, claiming that these people were killed on the street because of terrorist activity, etc. So I guess this is quite new, and they're doing it secretly. And the witnesses that contacted us said that, for example, one of the things they, again, I think is relatively new because they used to do pharmacological torture while the person was inside prison, was saying that you are released on bail. So bear in mind, the family needs to pay loads of money, but even that is not enough. You need to get an injection. And there is no explanation about what it is or any choice. And when the detainee basically protested and said, what is it? I don't want to have injection, which they call it vaccine, the guards. Then he got beaten up and he said, that's the only way you can be released. So no one knows what's that substance. And we insisted that anyone who gets such injection, they need to go and have a test. So he couldn't find any basically doctors that feel safe enough to do that. They said that you need to have to go to somewhere private to basically do that. And you know that with the situation
they're targeting and killing doctors too, of course.
Absolutely. But even in Iran, it's impossible for families who cannot even have food for money for food to go and pay such a price. And then in another case, another young female that one day after she was released, she died and no one knows why. So what we're hearing, there is a widespread use of what they say seemingly could be potassium. This is just speculation, obviously. There is no test or anything to prove that, but they get injection before they release some of them. So this is quite shocking. And also the injured in Fashafuye prison, they were just put in front of other prisoners to die without any treatment.
And this is a silent massacre because it's something that's not happening before our eyes. Talk to us about the significance of that.
Absolutely. I mean, what our committee, our campaign keeps saying that there is a massacre that happened on the street and they're still arresting people, but there is a hidden one as well that as we talk, it's unfolding. And most likely, as the regime feels these are the last days of their existence, then they start massacring even the current political prisoners in prison. So what do you call that when they take injured detainees, strangle them or shot them and then put them among them, or they put them in mass graves? We have actually one eyewitness that we can obviously identify, say his name or anything, that they witnessed that near Esfahan, near Bagh Rezvan, they were mass graved, that they identified that they were putting lime and also some kind of material on the graves, most probably to dissolve the body or basically destroy any sort of evidence. And this is actually first-hand eyewitness from that. So therefore, I mean, we don't know all those detainees who were captured, either they were injured or not, what happened to them, because even families, they don't know where they are.
My God, my God. So brutal. Talk about the pattern that you're seeing here with this new method, if you will.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that they have been using psychological, pharmacological torture for years, basically. And we have published report in 2023 indicating that during the Women Life Freedom protests, they have been using it nationwide everywhere, basically. But then we can see that now the method they use, instead of executing them and announcing them, which bring more outrage, what they do, they're killing them with injection. This has been happening, I would say, especially in the last 5-6 years. It has been intensified and is quite widespread, quite intentional, and it's all over the place, basically all cities. So what you see, it's a silent massacre that's happening. And unfortunately, because it's not called execution or being shot on the street, there is no attention on that on the media, because it's difficult to prove it. How can you, as a family, prove that your child was abducted, being taken to prison, and then shot dead, or being injected some sort of unknown substance? You cannot prove that. That's the problem.
Yeah, and it's hard to get reports. Like you said, doctors are being targeted. They're, like you, trying to dissolve even the grave sites and the bodies of these people to eliminate any sort of evidence. Very
Absolutely.
systematic campaign to kill these people.
It is not coincident. It's completely intentional, systematic, and been thought through, actually. How do they do that? So they leave less evidence. When we were doing our report in 2023, we actually contacted some of the doctors that they knew about it, but they were too scared to give any evidence, any sort of evidence regarding that. So we can see that what they do, they also control lots of doctors. If they in any way they help these people, they're going to be arrested as well. So it's a mass terrorization of the society. I must say that they haven't been successful because people are way more angry than before. But we can see the really silent execution, that's what we call it, that's going on. And I'm really concerned about what's happening and why the international community, they don't have any attention on tens of thousands of detainees and also political prisoners.
So speaking of which, what can the international community do now, or what would you like to see the international community do now, given this massacre?
I think the first thing, if we're talking about detainees and political prisoners, the first thing they need to do, they need to recall their ambassadors from Iran. They need to shut down the regime embassy and also expel their diplomats for those reasons. One, for massacring people, for abducting actually so many people, in tens of thousands of people. So it needs to be a concrete action, because otherwise the regime knows that there is no consequences for what they do, and they keep doing it. So right now we can see the diplomats are walking around in European countries having a nice life, while people in Iran, their kids it's subjected to the most brutal torture and killing. I mean, when some of these injured people that they had like a deep wound, they would be given a finishing shot. I just heard last night from someone who were in contact with, again, Isfahan, that in one of the Sepas hospital, what they did, they forced all the medical personnel to leave the room, and they strangled all these injured people.
Strangled them to death?
Strangled them to death because they couldn't shoot them. They didn't want anyone to hear the shooting, so they strangled them. And also they have removed all the CCTV from the hospital, so there is no evidence. So you can see how intentionally and systematic they think about not leaving any evidence.
And Shiva, John, is there any precedent for this? I mean, in terms of other countries, like where could somebody get such an idea from? Did we ever see this in happening? For example, I know for a lot of Russian opposition, sometimes they get poisoned or there's an injection of some sort, et cetera, et cetera.
I think they do. I mean, dictators all operate the same. They all use their own each other's experiences and which is the most killing one. We know that for example, even in terms of other countries like at the time, like Sepah Pastaran would train people in Iraq how to kill these young people who had demonstration in 2019. So it's many countries, including, as you said, in Russia or some other countries, actually, they use this because it's a very silent way. You don't see any sign on your face. If for example, if they give me some sort of injection, you don't see any bruise, you don't see anything right away. It works very kind of slowly. And by the time that you're out of the prison, they can claim that it has nothing to do with that because the person was alive. So we can see that pattern that being used. But the only problem is, unfortunately, in terms of Iran, it hasn't been talked about it. Like right now, you said in Russia, whereas in Iran, it has been used for years, but no one talks about it.
That's a very good point. And is there anything else you'd like to add on this incredibly disturbing but important topic?
I think what I want to indicate that what we've seen so far is really a fraction of what's happening in Iran right now. And I think my call is to all people that to make sure that put the detainees and political prisoners in every news, because the problem is now people can run away on the street, they can protect each other, they can hide, but where would political prisoners and detainees go? They are like hostages in the hands of the regime. And we have seen one example of that in the 80s, in the summer of 1988, when they massacred like thousands of political prisoners and no one knew about it. So I'm afraid this might happen again if the international community don't take an action regarding that. They need to specifically press the regime to free all these detainees and political prisoners. So the regime knows that internationally there is a pressure. So one might argue, say, such a regime doesn't care about it, but the pressure always works.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do, Shiva, you and your organization. Thank you for joining us on Eye for Iran.